Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Well, hello, my friend. Welcome to the Artist Next Level podcast. Super happy to have you here once again, like every week. It's always exciting to chat with you through this medium of the podcast. And my friend, I have a specific question I want to ask you today. A very important question, if I may add. The question is, how are you doing? Really, how are you doing right now? With everything that's going on in the world, the pandemic, everything else, you just have to watch the news for 10 minutes to know that there's a lot of uncertainty and tension just about everywhere. What's going on? How are you doing? How are you feeling? And that's actually a question that I email to my entire email list. Maybe you have gotten it if you're in my list. And I just ask, hey, what's frustrating you right now? I'm all ears. Let me know. We'd love to hear what's going on. I wanted to have a kind of an idea of what you're all going through, what other artists from around the world are going through right now, as we have, been on this together since March, what started this whole coronavirus and what started to be a great year and then all of a sudden went down into what it is now, right? I just sent out an email that said, what's your number one frustration? What's frustrating you right now? And lo and behold, I had tons of answers. Maybe you answered back if you received that email. And I'm still going through, replying to all those emails because I promised to reply to each and every one. And I have been doing so. It's taking me a while. But, the emails kept coming in left and right, from artists of all types, emerging artists, mid-career artists, established artists, artists in the United States, in Europe, in India, across the world, Latin America. It's just been so interesting to read and to just get a gauge of what's going on in the art today, in the art world, and in our world as artists, right? Because we are all so interconnected, and even though we're all in different parts of the world, and as you're listening to this podcast, wherever you may be at, it was so interesting to see the connectivity of the answers, right? How we are all going through very similar situations. So, as I looked at all the emails that I received and started replying and reading your stories and, your struggles, your frustrations right now, there were two that were like at the highest, they were at the very top of the top, where many artists kind of like first mention those two first and then everything else, or all the further artists just were those two. But there were two kind of top answers, two main frustrations that came out of that email that I really wanted to just come and address that here in the podcast and hopefully help you out today a little bit if this is one of the frustrations that you're having, which I'm going to tell you what those are, right? And then you can tell me if that's one of your frustrations going on right now. So that's kind of like the premise of this episode today, to hopefully give you some perspective, hopefully give you some pointers, point you in the right direction, help you out in whatever way I can as well, because I believe we are all on this together, right? And the podcast is for me such a great way to connect with you, to have a chat with you if you're willing to listen, whatever you may be doing right now. Maybe I'm giving you company right now as you are doing exercise. Maybe you're in your studio, maybe you're having lunch or breakfast, or maybe you're in between stuff, whatever it may be. I want to take some time to encourage you and to help you out as best as I can. So the very first struggle that came as a result of that email, or the main frustration, and I think you will guess this one, of course, is financial one, right? It's a financial frustration, I think, across the board from artists, in all corners of the world. The frustrations were those of financial situation, right? The main frustration is, I'm not selling art. or I'm not selling enough of it, or I'm not selling it with consistency. I remember one artist specifically who said, it's like bubbles, right? I have a burst of sales and then nothing, right? And so it's not sustainable. It's just not going to work for me in the long run, right? Others who altogether, they just were having a really hard time seeing any sales. So, people are not buying, and along that question, or along that frustration, I should say, a lot of artists, kind of after they express that frustration with sales, the kind of like the second part of that as a question, say, so Sergio, what do you think I should do to find more collectors, right? And how do I find more collectors? Seem to be kind of a follow-up to that statement or that frustration is, how do I find more collectors? Do you have anything that you want to share? And so I've been replying to, a lot of artists with some advice there, which I want to share also some here with you in more detail. And then the second frustration that came after that is that of marketing, kind of like where a lot of artists who said, hey, this is actually my second chance, in my life to do something that I really want. I came from working a 9-to-5 job, and now I'm working as an artist, and the marketing part is just so hard for me. It's really hard to sell myself, to market my own work. And there were even others who said, I'm already, in my I'm retired already from my job, and now I'm having to adapt all this technology and stuff, and it's just hard. How do I market myself, right, in this world today with everything that's happening so fast? So that was a big frustration for many. How to keep up with pretty much, if I had to summarize, I had to keep up with all this social media, all this marketing that we are supposed to do as artists and so on. And of course, there were other artists who had many frustrations with a lot of things happening in their life all at the same time. And, so like I said, I really appreciated hearing from many artists, and I'm slowly helping people out. But so let me share with you here some ideas, some thoughts that hopefully will help you out if you land in somewhere in those two main frustrations of sales or the continuity of sales, and then second, also if you kind of find yourself in that space where marketing your art and marketing yourself, keeping up with all that stuff is just hard for you. So let me address the first one first. I should say, let me address the first frustration right away, so I can help you out with that today. And the way I would like to do this is, first of all, let me kind of explain a little bit of the framework of sales that I teach inside our Next Level Academy, that I've been teaching artists for the last few years. Also through the Art Sales Challenge that I do every year, and the Small Works Art Sales Challenge that I do with tons of artists. We kind of go through this framework, which is pretty much divided into 4 parts. So the first part is your art, and then after that, once you have your art, which starts with, that's what starts it all, right? That's your art. And then after that, the audience, right? You need an audience that likes your art. And after the audience, because just having an audience is not enough, then after the audience, you gotta have their attention, right? Grabbing your audience attention, because your audience, you're not the only person they follow, right? They may follow 10 or 50 other artists, so you're just one of them. So how do you grab your audience attention? And then once you have that attention, what are you going to do with it? Many artists are good at grabbing attention, but they're not good at closing the deal or taking them to the next step, which is the last, the 4th step, which is the offer, or what I call the opportunity, right? So those are the 4 pillars in my art sales framework that I've been working with myself as an artist first, and has been successful for me, and I've been teaching many artists as well with great success too. And the idea here is to look at each one of those, and what I'm going to ask you is, as I explain each one of them in a little more detail, take a little piece of paper, or you can do it in your mind, rate each one of these four from 1 to 5. So you're going to qualify, or rate yourself in each one of these four areas from 1 to 5. 5 being you're doing the really good, and 1 being you're doing really bad or nothing at all. So that way, once we go through this quick exercise, you can look at, okay, which are out of these four areas need my highest attention right away, because it's impossible to do everything at once. You see, I always say sales is a result, right? It's the result of doing many things right. So we're going to look at these four areas and see which one you need to put your biggest attention right away first. It's like if you have a bucket and you're trying to fill it with water, but there are leaks. There are 4 big leaks. So you keep putting water on it, but you just never get to fill the bucket because all this water is leaking. So you got 4 leaks that we need to identify. We need to see which one has the biggest hole. So you definitely want to start with the one that has the biggest hole, so that even though the other ones may still be leaking, you can start filling up that bucket. So the first one is the art. And you will say, well, Sergio, of course I have art, and I'm not asking you to rate, if you think you have good or bad art. I hope that, you are always aiming to create the best art possible, the highest quality of art that you can make, that you're always committed to producing, great work in your studio, and you're always learning more about your tools, your techniques, your materials, your ideas. That's something that's ongoing, and you don't have to be in art school to do that. You can today. The tools of education are accessible to everywhere. If you're an oil painter, you can go to YouTube and find tons of videos on materials, techniques, brushes, pigments, all kinds of stuff, varnishes, etc. Right? If you are an acrylic artist, if you are an abstract, if you are a realist or surrealist, it doesn't matter what you do. You can educate yourself on always trying to make your best work possible, right? So when it comes to the first, pillar of the 4 pillars in the art sales framework, in my art sales framework, the first one is the art. And by this, I mean, are you presenting your art to the world in the best way possible? Meaning, are you documenting your art in the best way possible, right? Because you can have amazing work, but if your documentation sucks, is not good, it's not going to help you at all. Are you presenting your art in social media, online, in the best way possible? In other words, those your images are always beautiful, are clean, are clear. Are you showing details of your work? Are you showing the process of your art? Are you showing your work in different settings, not just the full frame? Are you doing a variety of things that help people understand your process, your ideas, the way you're working? Are you telling your stories on how the art is made, and your stories on things that you were thinking or going through? Or are you just posting random works or things that are made, but you're not really pulling attention on the delivery, right? That's what I'm talking about on the first one, because that is super important. That's why I always start on that, right? Remember, you are not the only artist that your audience may be following. You may be one of 10 or 15 or 50. And if you're not standing out, then you're not getting noticed. So you're always going to have a hard time finding the right audience, because you're not presenting yourself the best way possible. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Sometimes artists say, well, I'm having a really hard time getting followers, and it's not because people don't land on their profile, but sometimes they land in their profile, but they don't feel like they should follow you because you are not presenting your way cohesively and the best way possible. Again, you're one of hundreds, thousands of other artists that they may be looking at, on a given week or month. So they're following the artists that they feel that they like, not just one piece, but kind of like the ideas that the artist is working with, and the methods. And the first things they see is how we present ourselves. So rate yourself from 1 to 5. If you think you're doing a great job in documenting your art and you're showing it in many ways, presenting it in your social, you're using your Instagram stories, you are doing also details and putting up in settings, and you're doing really good documentation. You feel really good about the way you're documenting your art. You say, well, that's not a problem for me. I'm actually doing pretty good on that. Give yourself a 5. If you say, well, I'm doing good, but sometimes, I'm kind of laid back and not do very good, maybe give yourself a 4. If you're like, well, I could do a lot better, 3. If you're like, well, I'm really weak on that area, 2. If you're like, well, I really suck, when I look at my own pictures and I'm not really putting a lot of effort in showing my work in various settings or in other different contexts, or I'm not really talking much about my art, you might just post the picture and let it be, then give yourself a 1. Then you have a lot of work to do in that area. That may be the weakest link and that you need to address. So now let's go to the next pillar. So we talk about the art. The next pillar in this case will be the audience, right? The audience. And on this one, what I want to ask you is, are you on a constant basis, working towards growing your audience? And because here's the thing, most artists say or answer when I ask the question of their frustration, as I mentioned before, they ask, they answered of, well, sales, and Sergio, how do I find more collectors, right? And for many artists, when I reply, I say, well, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to reverse the question to you. What are you doing as an artist to put yourself in front of collectors, to make yourself foundable, right? Because here's the thing about collectors, and I've said this many times in my podcast and in my shows, in my video show. I have said this many times. Collectors are not walking around with a sign that says, hello, I'm an art collector, right? A collector could be a doctor, could be a lawyer, could be an architect, could be a school teacher, could be your next door neighbor, could be, who knows? They are everywhere and anywhere. And collectors are always looking. People who love art are always looking for art, right? It's just like people who love cars, they're always looking at, other cars, and they're following people who talk about cars and things like that, right? People who have an interest in cooking, they're following people who talk about cooking and who show recipes and so forth. People who love art, they're following artists that they find, that they love, that they find also connected with, right? And that's why number 1, the art pillar is so important, right? They find a connection with you. So they are always looking. So my question to you is, what are you doing to make yourself more foundable, right? More easy to find, more easy to connect with, and easy to interact with, right? So that's your audience, right? And then what are you doing to bring that audience into your bucket, right? Into your email list, into a follower, into somebody that you exchange a conversation. And that is very important. Sometimes, somebody follows you on social media and you look at their profile and say, well, that's not an art collector. Doesn't look like an art collector. Well, again, sometimes we make these erroneous visions of what an art collector should look like. And in my career as an artist and also as a gallerist and as a curator for many years, I have met many amazing collectors who had, never came through my head that they were art collectors. They didn't look like one. They didn't sound like one. Their Instagram profiles didn't reflect that they love art, but in fact they were. They were amazing, and they are still amazing people who are collectors who are not, all out talking about their art collection. They just do it. They just love it, and that's okay. So that's why it makes it hard sometimes. So what are you doing, right, yourself to be visible, to be findable? Because when you're not showing up to your audience, let me tell you something, somebody else is going to do it. It's already doing it, right? When you stop showing up to your audience, don't think that your audience is waiting for you. Somebody else is already taking your spot. Somebody else is already showing up. So might as well be you, my friend, right? So again, rate yourself on the second column, right? We talk about art, your art. Second column is your audience. How are you doing in that? You give yourself a 5 if you think you're doing great, you constantly keep inviting people to come to your list. You are sending people emails, keeping them informed, inviting them to the things that you're doing. You are also connecting with people. You're creating a small community on your social media. And a lot of people said, they're waiting for 10,000 followers to get excited, and they may have 300. And I would say, well, imagine 300 people come to your house. Would you say that's a small party or a big party? And they'll say, well, that's actually a huge party, right? Exactly. So if you cannot take attention of those 300 right now, what makes you think that you will be able to, take attention of 10,000, right? So, do for those 300 what you would do for 10,000. So, give yourself a 5 again if you think you're doing great, or if you are doing really bad on that, give yourself a 1. Maybe that's your area. Maybe that's the main one thing that you really need to focus on in the next few months. So, very important. Let's go to the next one, which is the third pillar in my RSS framework that I've been teaching inside the Our Next Level Academy. And the third one is on the attention, right? So here's the deal. You may have 300 followers or 10,000 followers, but if you do not know how to grab their attention, then they're not looking, right? They're not seeing you. They're not finding you. They just because they're your followers doesn't mean that they're, following what you're doing. So what are you doing again to grab their attention, to keep them connected, to keep the conversation channel open? Because at the end of the day, people buy art, because they love what they're seeing. They can imagine it in their home or office or whatever they might want to have that. A lot of times, collectors of original art, they see something that they want and they just want to have it, right? So what are you doing to stay in touch with them, to stay connected, right? To grab their attention on an ongoing basis. You grab their attention the first time they find you, they follow you, and then what? Did you just leave them hanging? What are you doing to keep that, to grab their attention? Because in today's world, we are playing with the algorithms, and as you know, the algorithms that work in all social medias are all based on engagement. In other words, you post a picture, if there's no engagement, pretty quickly it dies out in social media, right? Meaning that nobody is going to see it anymore because the algorithms is not showing it to more people because they rate it as low engagement, versus an image that has a lot of engagement, very quickly gets seen by more people. Why? Because the algorithms say, well, this image is worth the attention of people, so we're going to continue showing it around, because at the end of the day, that's what social media wants, right? That we stick around in their platform. So that's what you have to think about, the attention. What am I doing this week to grab my audience attention? And by that, I don't mean you have to do something silly, something stupid, or show skin or anything like that. No, because you just have to be authentic. You just have to be yourself. You just got to think outside the box. You just have to think creatively, because we're creatives. We're creatively as to what things can I do, to show the things that I need within related to my art, of course, as I relate to my art and to my story, to get my audience attention. So that's number 3. I'm sorry. So again, rate yourself on that. 5. You say, I'm getting pretty good engagement from people. I get a lot of comments, and I connect with a lot of people. I have a lot of conversations on social and DMs and things like that. Well, that's high engagement. Then you're doing good on that one. Maybe that's not the problem. Maybe that's not the weakest link. Maybe that's your strongest link, right? But give yourself, a 4, 3, 2, 1, depending where you think you land on the scale. 1, if you're like, that's my worst one. I'm really bad at following up. I'm really bad at connecting with folks. I'm really bad, at anything that calls attention to myself. And it's not like you have to go crazy all out either, right? It's a balance. I'm not a full extrovert. I'm somewhere in between introvert, extrovert. I like people, but I like also to be in the background as well. So, you have to find the sweet balance for you, what kind of works for you. So there are many things you can do in that end to grab the attention in an authentic way that doesn't make you feel weird as an artist putting yourself out there. All right, and the last pillar, which is the pillar number four. I was gonna say five. Number 4 of the art sales framework is the offer or the attention, the offer or the opportunity. The offer or the opportunity, right? Which are, I consider them the same thing. I just word them a little differently, depends on who I'm speaking to. But the offer, the idea is giving people an opportunity to buy. A lot of times artists don't sell because they don't ask for the sale. And I see this in my academy all the time. Inside the Art Next Level Academy, artists who come in, they go through my program and they learn all these 4 pillars, and they're working with me and learning how to market their art and be true to themselves and learning how to talk about their art and so on. And then when they get to this part and they begin to ask for the sale in non-salesy ways, they really quickly figured out like, wow, I think that was kind of like the missing part. I sold something, right, for the first time, or I sold a few things, or people started asking, right? So that's the offer. And the offer to me is not putting buttons on your website that says buy now. That's not the offer. That's just a tool, or that's just a button, right? But the button doesn't make the sale. Is the opportunity that you're giving people. Do you have a marketing calendar, right, in which you are looking at when you're going to push and when you're going to pull, right? Which is something I have talked about in an earlier podcast, the push and pull idea. Are you doing those things to help you out? So that's very important, my friend. And you really need to understand that sometimes if you don't ask, you don't get. As simple as that. Just because you posted doesn't mean people know it's for sale. Doesn't mean people know that they could buy it. Doesn't mean a lot of people assume that art is very expensive, and it could be. And a lot of people assume that it's out of their reach, and it's not always the case. Sometimes they're afraid to ask. Sometimes they need a little help getting closer to making that commitment. And it's up to us as artists to make it hard or make it easy for them. And unfortunately, most artists make it really hard and really difficult to make that sale, to make that step, that transition. And again, you don't have to use like buy now language. You just have to invite people into an opportunity to be part of what you're doing in the world. And if you are doing things in the world to make this a better place through your art, and you talk about it and you project that energy, that passion. A lot of people sometimes jump into those things because they want to be part of that. So that's the number 4, right? The number 4 pillar is, in this case, thinking about the offer or the opportunity that you're giving people to participate in what you are doing in the world. So that's one for you to think about, right? Rate yourself on that one. Are you a 5, a 3, a 1? Again, and be realistic. If that's one where you say, well, I'm actually pretty good at it, you're giving offers and you're giving opportunities to people, but maybe nobody's catching, nobody's biting. Well, maybe because that's not your weakest link. Maybe your weakest link is one of the other 3 that we mentioned before. Maybe you have great opportunities, but nobody's looking, right? So then that's not a problem, right? Then you have a problem of attention, right? Or too small of an audience, right? So rate yourself on that one. Look at how you're doing on that one. Maybe you are a 1. You're like, I really suck about asking for the sale. I really suck about telling people, that this thing is for sale. I feel weird. I feel obnoxiously sick when I try to say that something is for sale. And it happens. I met artists who literally they get like sick. They feel like horrible when they have to say that something is for sale. And I understand, I understand that. It's something that it's a mental block. It's a mental kind of a roadblock, mindset block, right? Like my wife, Dr. Aina, she always says, those mindset blocks that prevents us from moving forward, that are kind of blocking our view and not letting us really excel. So a lot of times it's just that, it's a fear about what others will say, how others will rate me, right? We have like this idea that the art world has is like this person with a notepad always making notes to see what you posted, what you said, all these things that are just totally not true, but they are constructs of our imagination that create this block. So give yourself a rate on that one as well. So now you have there the 4 pillars of the art sales framework that I've been working and teaching in my Art Next Level Academy. And so I hope by rating the process of rating these, you now have which one is your weakest point and which one is your strongest point. I hope you didn't put 1 on all of them. I'm assuming you're a little bit better in some than in others, right? I don't think nobody is that bad. You may maybe feel that you're that bad maybe, but everybody is good at some things and bad at others. We all have weaknesses and strengths. So see which ones you're good at, see which ones you're not so good at, see which ones you are excelling, which ones you suck at. So now okay, if I need to fix the leaky bucket, right? So which one has the biggest hole that you need to close first, put your attention first, and that should help you out right away. So I hope this episode helps you out. And my friend, of course, as usual, know that I'm here to help. I'm here to give you the strategies that you need. Inside my Art Next Level Academy, I teach all of those 4 pillars. And if that's something that you need help with right now, if you're like, Sergio, I really suck at 2 or 3, or I just need help with all of them, or whatever, know that I have specific courses that can help you out. I answer all your questions inside the Art Next Level Academy. I help you out, so that you can get better. You can, close that leaky bucket that you may be trying to fill. And know that it is not easy. It's not a push of a button and then it's fixed. It takes work, it takes learning. But once you learn it and you practice it, you realize, well, actually that wasn't too bad. And that has been my experience as well as an artist myself. Knowing that when I learn something, I try it, I test it, and then I realized looking back, well, actually that wasn't so hard, was it? Now I can keep moving forward and learning new things. So if you need help with that, I would love to help you out, especially as we're going right now through this, world crisis. And I know financial situation is really bad for many artists, probably also who listen to this podcast. So if that's you, my friend, just write me an email. Let me know that you heard this podcast. I'll be happy to, send you a great offer that can help you out, at least to try out our academy for a very accessible price point, so that you can try it and see you can get as much as you can as you are able to take advantage of it. So if that's the case, just drop me a quick note through email. Say, hey, Sergio, I listened to your podcast. Help me out. So you have to do is send me an email to Yes, Y-E-S, yes, at takethenextlevel.com. Super easy. Yes, at takethenextlevel.com. Again, subject line, you can just put podcast. Make it easy. And then in the copy of the email, just put help me or something like that. Or tell me which out of those 4 pillars, is your weakest one. That I would love to hear how you rate. Actually, I would love to hear how you rate yourself on those 4. You can just drop me an email with how you rate yourself. We'd love to hear from you and send you some pointers there as well. So again, just email me at yes@takethenextlevel.com. yes@takethenextlevel.com. Super easy. yes@takethenextlevel.com. Hope to hear from you, my friend. Hope you have an amazing week. Amazing day. Please share this episode with your friends. And as usual, I'll probably post another podcast episode this week, something related to something that I have already shared in some of the other social medias. I'll do that as well, share it with you. This specific episode is only for the podcast, so you will not see this content in any of my other outlets. So have a great day. We'll see you very soon. Goodbye.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.